The champagne flute shattered against the marble floor like a gunshot in the hushed ballroom, shards scattering like the family's fractured loyalties. "I'm gay," Timothy blurted, his voice cracking over the jazz band's lazy saxophone riff, every eye in the room snapping to him like spotlights on a fugitive. Grandpa Harlan's hand froze mid-clap, his weathered face splitting into a grin that no one saw coming, because in that split-second silence, the whole damn world tilted on its axis. Timothy's heart hammered against his ribs as the words hung in the air, thicker than the summer humidity seeping through the French doors of the old Connecticut estate. The party was meant to be a celebration. Grandpa Harlan's 80th birthday. A lavish affair with crystal chandeliers dripping light like honey over linen-draped tables groaning under silver platters of lobster thermidor and key lime pie. But now, the air crackled with unspoken accusations, the kind that had simmered in the Keller family for years, bubbling up from resentments as old as the ivy climbing the stone walls outside. He'd planned it for weeks, this moment of reckless truth, standing there in his thrift store blazer, navy wool that smelled faintly of mothballs and the Brooklyn coffee shop where he pulled espresso shots. Timothy felt exposed, like a raw nerve under fluorescent lights. His cousins, all polished in their Ivy League polos, stared with mouths agape, forks hovering mid-bite. Aunt Lydia, ever the pillar of Southern Baptist propriety transplanted to Yankee soil, clutched her pearls as if they were a rosary. And his father, Richard, Timothy's dad, the Keller who got away with cornering the market on organic kale chips, paled like he'd just been handed a pink slip. "Timmy, what the hell did you just say?" Richard's voice sliced through the room, low and venomous, the kind of tone he'd used when Timothy flunked algebra in 9th grade. It wasn't a question. It was a demand for retraction, a plea wrapped in fury. Timothy swallowed hard, tasting the metallic tang of fear. At 28, he was no kid anymore. But in this room, surrounded by the ghosts of expectations, Harvard diplomas on the walls, oil portraits of stern great-grandfathers glowering from above the mantel, he felt 12 again, hiding dog-eared copies of The Joy of Gay Sex under his mattress. "I said I'm gay, Dad. Have been since. Forever. And I'm done pretending." The jazz band faltered, the clarinetist missing a note that warbled into awkward silence. Whispers erupted like fireworks. Did he just? Harlan's boy? The one who? And Timothy's cheeks burned. He'd come out to his therapist 6 months ago, in a cramped midtown office with posters of serene beaches mocking his turmoil. To his best friend, Jax, over cheap tequila in a dive bar off the High Line, where Jax had hugged him so tight it bruised. But family? This was the nuclear option, detonated at the heart of their waspy empire. Grandpa Harlan cleared his throat, the sound like gravel under boots, and pushed himself up from his leather armchair with the help of his oak cane. At 80, he was a force, broad-shouldered even now, with a shock of white hair and eyes like chipped flint that had stared down boardrooms and bull markets alike. The man who'd built Keller Industries from a garage tinkering with tractor parts into a conglomerate spanning agritech to renewables. The room hushed as he shuffled forward, every step deliberate, the cane tapping a rhythm that commanded attention. "Son," Harlan said, his voice a rumble warm as bourbon, clapping a gnarled hand on Timothy's shoulder. The touch was firm, grounding, and for a heartbeat, Timothy thought he might crumble. Takes guts to say that out loud. More than most of these vultures ever mustered. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Richard's face twisted, shock, betrayal, the slow dawn of something uglier. "Dad, you can't be serious. It's a phase, right? Timmy's just confused. College stress or that city poison." "Richard," Harlan cut him off, sharp as a guillotine. "Shut your trap. Boy's got more spine than you did at his age. Peddling door-to-door encyclopedias to pay for that law degree you never used." The old man's laugh was a bark, echoing off the vaulted ceilings, and he pulled Timothy into a bear hug that smelled of pipe tobacco and Old Spice. "Proud of you, kid. Damn proud." It was the hug that broke the dam. Tears stung Timothy's eyes, hot and unbidden, as relatives shifted uncomfortably, Aunt Lydia dabbing at her mascara with a monogrammed napkin. His sister, Elena, 32, married to a hedge fund bro with a receding hairline, shot him a look that was half sympathy, half sorrow, like she'd known this was coming and dreaded the fallout. But the real storm brewed in Richard's eyes. As the band struck up again, a tentative swing tune to salvage the mood, guests milling back to their small talk about stock tips and summer Hamptons shares. Richard cornered Timothy by the grand piano. You think this changes nothing? Dad's soft on you because you're the baby, the artistic one. But mark my words, Tim, this family's built on legacy. Blood, not whatever this is. Timothy's fists clenched at his sides. Legacy, that's what it all boiled down to. The sprawling estate on 50 acres of rolling hills. The portfolio worth 9 figures. The name that opened doors from Wall Street to Washington. Harlan had no wife left. No kids who'd stuck close except Elena, who was too busy with her own brood. Timothy, the black sheep with his graphic design gigs and volunteer shifts at the local LGBTQ center, had always been the wild card. The one Harlan called my dreamer. I don't want your pity, Dad, Timothy whispered, voice steady despite the quake in his chest. I just want to breathe. Richard's laugh was bitter, devoid of humor. Breathe? Boy, you're about to choke on the mess you've made. The night wore on in fits and starts. Forced toasts, clinking glasses masking the undercurrent of judgment. Timothy nursed a scotch, the burn a poor substitute for courage. Watching as cousins avoided his gaze, uncles muttered about family values. Jax had texted earlier, "You got this, Tim. Call if it goes south." But south was the only direction, it seemed, as Elena pulled him aside in the rose garden, the air thick with blooms and regret. They're scared, Tim, she said, her voice soft, linking arms like they were kids again, chasing fireflies in this very yard. Dad's the worst, he sees it as a reflection on him. But Grandpa, he loves you, always has. Timothy nodded, throat tight. Yeah, but love's not enough when it's conditional. Elena squeezed his arm. It won't be, not from me. As fireworks cracked overhead, Harlan's signature flourish, red and gold blooming against the starry sky. Timothy slipped away to the library, the estate's sanctum of leather-bound tomes and flickering firelight. Harlan found him there, slumped in a wingback chair, staring at a faded photo on the mantel. The family circa 1995. Timothy, a gap-toothed 8-year-old perched on Grandpa's knee, both grinning like they'd conquered the world. Kid, Harlan grunted, easing into the opposite chair with a wince from his bad hip. You look like I did after shipping out to Nam. Shell-shocked. Timothy managed a wry smile. Just waiting for the court-martial. Harlan chuckled, pouring 2 fingers of scotch from the decanter. Ain't no court here, just family. Messy as hell, but real. He slid a glass over, clinking it against Timothy's. Your dad. He's got his demons. Lost your mom young, buried himself in work to forget. Thinks if he grips tight enough, nothing slips away. Including me? Timothy's voice was small, the vulnerability slipping out like a confession. Harlan's eyes softened, crinkles deepening. Especially you. But listen, Tim, I see you. The sketches you send, the stories from that shelter you run art classes at. You're the heart of this clan, even if they don't know it yet. They talked then, really talked, for the first time in years. Harlan shared tales of his own youth. Bootleg jazz clubs in Harlem. A stolen kiss with a soldier under the Brooklyn Bridge that he buried deeper than any foxhole. World wasn't kind then, he admitted, voice gravelly. But hiding? That's a slow poison. By the time the party's embers died, guests drifting to limos, leaving behind confetti and crushed dreams, Timothy felt a fragile peace settle. Harlan walked him to the guest cottage, the night air crisp with autumn's edge. Get some rest, son. Tomorrow's a new page. But as Timothy lay in the 4-poster bed, sheets cool against his skin, sleep evaded him. The estate loomed outside the window, a silhouette of secrets. The pond where he'd learned to skip stones, the orchard heavy with apples like forbidden fruit. He'd come out for freedom, but freedom tasted like ash when it scorched the bridges behind. Little did he know, the real inferno was just igniting. Dawn crept over the estate like a thief, painting the manicured lawns in hesitant gold. Timothy woke to the trill of cardinals outside the cottage window, his head throbbing from too little sleep and too much scotch. The events of last night replayed in fractured clips. The shatter of glass, Harlan's hug, Richard's glare that could curdle milk. He rolled over, burying his face in the pillow that still carried faint traces of lavender from the housekeeper's linens, wishing he could burrow deeper, disappear into the weave of cotton. A knock rattled the door, sharp, insistent. "Tim? It's Elena. Open up before Dad storms in like the Spanish Inquisition." He groaned, swinging his legs off the bed. Elena breezed in, balancing 2 styrofoam cups of coffee and a plate of muffins that looked pilfered from the breakfast spread. Her blonde bob was impeccable, as always, but dark circles shadowed her eyes, betraying the family war council she'd no doubt endured at sunrise. "Rough night?" she asked, handing him a coffee. Black, 2 sugars, just how he liked it. Timothy took a sip, the bitterness grounding him. "Understatement. You." She sank onto the quilted bench at the foot of the bed, nibbling a blueberry muffin. "Mom called from Florida, Aunt Lydia's version of a prayer chain, I guess. Dad's on a rampage talking about protecting the legacy. As if loving who you love erodes stock prices." He paced to the window, overlooking the gravel drive where valets had parked a fleet of gleaming SUVs the night before. Now it was empty save for Harlan's ancient Cadillac, a '57 Fleetwood that purred like a contented lion. "Legacy," Timothy echoed, the word sour on his tongue. "That's code for, don't embarrass us." Elena's sigh was heavy. "He's scared, Tim, of losing control. Grandpa's been hinting at the will revisions, pouring more into green initiatives, your pet causes. Dad sees you as the loose cannon that'll tank it all." Timothy's stomach twisted. He'd known about Harlan's philanthropy. The old man had funneled millions into queer youth programs anonymously, checks arriving at the center with notes scrawled in that looping script. "Keep fighting the good fight." But the estate, the bulk of it, that was fairy tale stuff, not reality for the grandson who sketched protest posters instead of balance sheets. Before he could respond, his phone buzzed. Jack's, of course. Heard from Elena. "You alive? Need extraction?" A heart emoji, then an eggplant for levity. Timothy's lips quirked. Jack's had been his anchor since Pratt Institute days, when they'd bonded over late-night figure drawing sessions that blurred into something more. Not lovers, exactly. Jack's was pan and poly, a whirlwind of tattoos and temp jobs, but the kind of soul-deep connection that made coming out feel less like jumping off a cliff. "Hanging in," he texted back. "Send whiskey via drone." Elena glanced at her watch, a delicate Rolex that screamed old money. "Grandpa wants us all in the study at 10. Family meeting, he called it. Brace yourself." The study was Harlan's fortress. Walls lined with mahogany shelves bowing under the weight of first editions and brass telescopes. A massive globe in the corner scarred from decades of tiny conquests. By 10 sharp, the Kellers assembled like defendants in a lineup. Richard Ramrod straight in a crisp Oxford shirt, Aunt Lydia fanning herself with a back issue of Town and Country, cousins fidgeting with their phones. Timothy slipped in last, claiming the wingback nearest the window, sunlight slanting across his knuckles like a spotlight. Harlan entered last, cane thumping authoritatively, a folder tucked under his arm. He didn't sit, just stood at the head of the Persian rug, surveying them with the keen eye of a general. "Folks," he started, voice steady. "Last night was a wake-up call. Timothy here laid it all bare, and instead of clapping, y'all clammed up tighter than a clam at low tide." Richard shifted, jaw working. "Dad, with respect, this isn't the time. Tim's announcement changes things. The foundation, the board, they expect a certain image." "Image?" Harlan's laugh was thunderous. "Boy, the only image that matters is truth. I've spent 80 years building this empire on lies and half-truths. Marriages of convenience. Deals in smoke-filled rooms. No more. Tim's got the balls to live honest. Rest of you could learn." The room erupted. Aunt Lydia whimpered about the neighbors. A cousin muttered PR nightmare. And Richard slammed a fist on the armrest. "This is about more than feelings, Dad. The estate, it's our security. If Tim's lifestyle leaks, it could leak." Harlan's eyes blazed. "Let it flood. For all I care. I've updated the will. Tim gets the lion's share, the house, the trusts, the works. Because he's the one with vision, not vultures circling a carcass." Stunned silence fell, broken only by Richard's strangled choke. Timothy's world narrowed to a pinprick. Inheritance? It was absurd, a plot twist from one of those Hallmark movies Elena devoured. But Harlan's gaze met his, steady and sure, and something bloomed in Timothy's chest, warm, terrifying hope. You can't, Richard whispered, face ashen. After everything I've done. Expanded the brand, secured the mergers. Secured. Harlan scoffed. You secured a gilded cage, son. Tim hears breaking free. The meeting dissolved into chaos. Accusations flying like shrapnel, Lydia in hysterics, cousins texting lawyers. Timothy fled to the orchard, boots crunching fallen apples, the sweet rot mingling with his nausea. Jax called then, voice a lifeline through the speaker. Dude, Elena spilled. You're the prodigal heir now? Spill the tea. Timothy leaned against an ancient oak, bark rough under his palms. It's nuts, Jax. Dad's plotting a coup, I think. And me? I just wanted to not lie anymore. Jax's tone softened, that husky drawl from his Georgia roots slipping in. You deserve this, Tim. The old man sees your light. Hey, remember that mural we painted on the warehouse? Love wins? This is your win. They talked for an hour, Jax's stories of his latest fling. A barista with a poetry slam habit, easing the knot in Timothy's gut. By the time he hung up, the sun was high, bees droning lazy circles. But peace was fleeting. As he looped back to the house, he overheard Richard on the patio, phone to his ear, voice a venomous hiss. Yeah, it's bad. The kid's out, and Dad's handing him the keys. We need to move fast. Discredit him, prove incompetence. Family's everything, right? Betrayal hit like a sucker punch. Richard, his father, the man who'd taught him to ride a bike on these very paths, who'd whispered, I love you at tuck-ins, was scheming to dismantle him. For what? A fortune that Harlan deemed Timothy worthy of. That afternoon, Harlan found him in the gazebo, sketching furiously in his battered moleskine. Swirling lines of faces, half-formed, echoing the turmoil inside. Heard the buzz, the old man said, settling beside him with a thermos of coffee. Your pa's got a bee in his bonnet. Timothy's pencil snapped. More like a hornet's nest. He's calling in favors. Dad said something about proving incompetence. Harlan nodded, unsurprised. Always was a climber, but blood's thicker than ink on a contract. He paused, eyes distant. Ever tell you about your grandma? Eliza. She was my rock, fierce, queer as a $3 bill in her own way. Loved women, not that we advertised. Taught me love ain't a transaction. Timothy's breath caught. You knew. Harlan winked. Lived it, kid. That's why the will stands. You're her echo. Kind, unapologetic. As dusk fell, painting the sky in bruised purples, Timothy wandered the estate's hidden paths, memories flooding. Summer's skinny dipping in the pond with Elena, Harlan's gruff bedtime stories of outlaws and underdogs. Romance had always eluded him. Flings in the city that fizzled under scrutiny, a college boyfriend who'd ghosted after Thanksgiving with the fam. But here, amid the whispering maples, he felt a pull toward something deeper, a love forged in fire. Dinner was a minefield, silent forks scraping plates of roast beef and Yorkshire pudding, tension thick as fog. Richard's eyes bored into Timothy across the mahogany table, promising war. Later, alone in the cottage, Timothy scrolled Jax's Insta. A selfie from a rooftop party, city lights haloing his grin. Miss you, Timothy typed, then deleted. Too vulnerable, too soon. But as sleep claimed him, dreams wove in Harlan's words, a tapestry of possibility. The betrayal loomed, a shadow lengthening. But for the first time, Timothy glimpsed his own strength. Fragile, yes, but unbroken. Little did he know the shadows were gathering allies. The third day dawned stormy, thunder rumbling like distant artillery over the estate's thunderhead gray skies. Timothy woke to rain lashing the windows, a relentless tattoo that mirrored the pounding in his temples. He'd barely slept, haunted by visions of Richard's scheming whispers, the will's ink drying like a noose. Downstairs, the kitchen hummed with activity. Caterers prepping for the post-party brunch, the air redolent of sizzling bacon and fresh scones. But the undercurrent was electric, charged with unspoken vendettas. Elena cornered him by the Aga stove, pressing a mug of chamomile into his hands. Dad's holed up in the den with cousin Mark, the lawyer shark. They're dissecting the will like it's a frog in bio class. Timothy's grip tightened on the mug, steam curling like ghosts. Let them. Grandpa's word is law. She arched a brow, her lawyer's precision cutting through. In court, maybe, but Dad's got dirt, your instability, as he calls it. That DUI from college? The freelance gigs that barely cover rent? He's painting you as a flight risk. The words landed like slaps. The DUI, a stupid night after a breakup, breathalyzer at 0.08. Community service that Harlan had quietly paid off. Instability, code for queer, for not fitting the mold. Timothy set the mug down, appetite soured. So what's the play? Contest it. Elena hesitated, then pulled him into the sunroom, away from prying ears. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the deluge, potted ferns dripping condensation. Harlan called me last night. He's adding a codicil, your stewardship of the queer initiatives, tied to the estate. But Richard, he's rallying the troops. Aunt Lydia's on board, whispering about protecting the family's soul. Betrayal's second wave crashed harder than the first. Lydia, who'd baked him cookies shaped like stars after Mom died, slipping away like sand. Timothy paced, the wicker rug muffling his steps. Why? Money's nice, but this? It's personal. Because you're the mirror they don't want to face, Elena said softly. Dad's always chased approval, Grandpa's shadow. Now you're stepping into the light, unapologetically you. Scares the hell out of them. Her words lingered as Timothy escaped to the stables. Rain slicking his hair, mud sucking at his sneakers. The horses nickered softly in their stalls, warm breaths fogging the air. Harlan's old hunters, retired to green pastures. He leaned against a post, stroking the nose of Maverick, a bay gelding with eyes like melted chocolate. What would you do, buddy? Fight or flee? A voice from the shadows startled him. Jax, drenched and grinning, duffel slung over one shoulder. I'd fight, with backup. Timothy's jaw dropped. How? Elena said you needed cavalry. Jax stepped forward, pulling him into a hug that soaked through both their shirts, solid and sure. Up close, Jax smelled of rain and sandalwood soap. His dark curls plastered to his forehead, hazel eyes. Wait. No, Jax's were green, flecked with gold, sparkling with mischief. You drove all night? Timothy murmured into his shoulder, the embrace lingering a beat too long, warmth blooming low in his belly. From the city? Piece of cake. Besides, couldn't miss the drama. Jax pulled back, but his hand stayed on Timothy's arm, thumb tracing a lazy circle. Tell me everything. They retreated to the hayloft, a makeshift area above the storm, bales stacked like barricades. Timothy spilled it all. The coming out, the will, Richard's machinations. Words tumbling like the rain below. Jax listened, legs dangling over the edge, interjecting with bullshit at the betrayals. Hell yeah, at Harlan's defiance. When Timothy faltered, voice cracking on the loneliness, Jax shifted closer, their shoulders brushing. You're not alone, Tim, he said, low and fervent. Never were. That night in the bar when you told me, I saw you really saw. Brave, beautiful you. The air thickened, charged beyond the thunder. Timothy's pulse raced, eyes tracing the line of Jax's jaw, the faint scar above his lip from a skate crash. Friendship had always danced on this edge, unspoken tension in shared glances, accidental touches. Now, with the world unraveling, it ignited. Jax leaned in first, tentative, lips brushing Timothy's in a question. Timothy answered, hand cupping Jax's neck, pulling him deeper. The kiss was rain-slick and desperate. Tongues tentative at first, then hungry, years of what-ifs pouring out. Jax tasted like mint and possibility. His fingers threading through Timothy's hair, tugging just enough to elicit a gasp. They broke apart breathless, foreheads pressed, rain drumming applause. Been wanting that, Jax whispered, grin sheepish. Me too, Timothy admitted, heart soaring. But timing. Screw timing. Jax kissed him again, softer, a promise. They tangled there in the loft, hands exploring with the reverence of rediscovery. Jax's palms sliding under Timothy's shirt, tracing ribs and scars. Timothy nipping at Jax's collarbone, eliciting shivers. It wasn't frenzied sex, but a slow unraveling, bodies speaking what words couldn't. I see you. I stay. After, wrapped in a horse blanket amid the hay scent, they talked dreams, Timothy's gallery show, Jax's graphic novel about queer outlaws in the South. The storm eased as they dozed, limbs entwined, a fragile idyll. But idols shatter. By evening, the house buzzed with arrivals. More relatives, summoned by Richard's siren call. The brunch stretched into a tribunal, crystal clinking under storm-lit chandeliers. Harlan held court at the head, but Richard seized the floor, folder in hand. Affidavits, character assessments, a damning email chain from Timothy's ex, unearthed like buried mines. "This isn't hate," Richard declared, voice quivering with false piety. "It's prudence. Tim's unstable parties that center he volunteers at drawing crowds of undesirables. The estate needs steady hands, not scandal." Gasps, nods from Lydia's camp. Timothy's stomach roiled, Jax's hand under the table a secret anchor. "Undesirables?" he echoed, rising. "You mean people like me? Loving who they love without your permission?" Richard's eyes hardened. "Exactly. Dad, rethink this. For the family." Harlan's cane slammed the floor, silencing the room. "Family? This family's rotting from the inside because of hypocrites like you. Richard, I wrote the will clear. Tim inherits because he's got heart, the kind that builds, not hoards." But the tide turned ugly. Cousin Mark, slick as oil, cited clauses. Mental competency reviews, no contest penalties. Whispers of therapy records. Timothy sessions on grief, identity. Leaked like poison. Betrayal crested when Elena wavered, her voice small. "Tim, maybe a compromise? Co-trusteeship." The knife twisted. Even she, his confidant, cracking under pressure. Timothy bolted. Rain soaking him anew as he ran to the pond. Jax calling after. He collapsed on the dock, sobs racking him. The water black and unyielding below. Jax found him, wrapping him in a slicker, holding tight as thunder rolled. "They're wrong, Tim. All of them. You're enough." But doubt gnawed. The high tide of love crashed against the low of loss. Family fracturing, romance blooming amid ruins. As lightning forked the sky, Timothy wondered if inheritance was worth the war. The storm broke, but the real tempest brewed within. Sunlight pierced the clouds like a hesitant truce the morning after the tribunal, gilding the estate's sodden lawns in deceptive calm. Timothy stirred in the cottage, Jax's arm heavy across his waist, the weight a bomb against the ache in his chest. Last night's breakdown by the pond had stripped him bare, sobs echoing over the water, Jax's whispers weaving through like lifelines. Now, in the soft light filtering through lace curtains, reality intruded. The will's fate hung by a thread, family loyalties shredded, and a new vulnerability pulsing between him and Jax. "Morning, handsome," Jax murmured, nuzzling Timothy's neck, stubble rasping like sandpaper. His hand traced lazy patterns on Timothy's hip, igniting embers from the loft's fire. Timothy turned, capturing Jax's lips in a slow kiss that tasted of salt and second chances. "You stayed. Wild horses couldn't drag me." Jax propped on an elbow, green eyes serious. "But we gotta face the music." Harlan texted, "Emergency powwow at noon. Your dad's bringing reinforcements." The idyll fractured. Timothy showered, the hot water sluicing away grime but not grief. Emerging to find Jax brewing coffee in the galley kitchenette, humming an old Billie Holiday tune. Over mugs at the scarred pine table, they plotted not defense but defiance. "Show them your work," Jax urged. "The center's murals, those portraits of kids finding their voice. Prove you're not unstable. You're a force." By noon, the study felt like a coliseum, air thick with cologne and contempt. Richard paced like a prosecutor, flanked by Mark and a silver-haired attorney from Hartford, briefcases bulging with legalese. Aunt Lydia perched primly, Bible in lap. Elena hovered by the window, guilt etching her features. Harlan sat enthroned in his armchair, cane across knees like a scepter, Timothy and Jax beside him. Jax's presence a bold statement, hand brushing Timothy's in silent solidarity. "Let's cut the theater," Harlan growled as Richard launched into rehearsed barbs. "You've got your papers, I've got mine." The attorney slid forward a codicil notarized and ironclad. Timothy as executor of the estate's philanthropic arm, with veto power on divestitures, tied to performance metrics on social impact. Grandpa's vision, the man intoned, is legacy through equity. Mr. Keller Jr.'s stewardship ensures it. Richard snatched it, scanning with paling fury. This is coercion. Emotional blackmail using Tim's proclivities to strong-arm us. Proclivities. Jax's voice cut like a whip, calm but lethal. All eyes swiveled to him, the outsider, tattooed and uninvited. That's code for love, Mr. Keller. And last I checked, the Constitution's got a clause for that. Snickers from the cousins. Richard's face modeled. Who the hell are you? Jax Rivera. Friend. Artist. And the guy who's seen Tim build more bridges than you've burned. Jax met Timothy's gaze, a spark leaping. He's poured his soul into that center. Teaching queer kids to paint their truths. That's stability, sir. That's heart. Timothy's throat tightened. No one had ever advocated like this, raw and unfiltered. He stood, voice steadying. Dad, I get it, you're scared. Of change, of me not being your mini-me. But this. He tapped the codicil. It's not about money. Is Grandpa seeing me, really seeing? The sketches, the stories, the fight. If you contest it, you're contesting that. Elena stepped forward then, voice quavering but firm. Tim's right. I folded last night, and I'm sorry. But family isn't boardrooms and betrayals. It's this. She gestured to Harlan, eyes misty. Dad, if you push, you'll lose us all. The room held its breath. Richard deflated, shoulders slumping. The fight leaching out like air from a punctured tire. I just wanted to protect you, son. From the world, from itself. Timothy crossed to him, hesitating, then pulling his father into an awkward hug. The first in years. Richard stiffened, then softened, a hand patting Timothy's back. I love you, kid. Even this. Tears pricked. Love you too, Dad. All of me. Harlan cleared his throat, dabbing his eyes with a handkerchief monogrammed HK. That's the codicil talking. Now let's eat. Cook's got pot roast waiting. No more war rooms. The brunch unfolded in fits. Stilted toasts giving way to genuine laughs. Lydia even asking Jax about his tattoos, tracing the rainbow phoenix on his forearm with tentative curiosity. As plates cleared, Harlan pulled Timothy aside in the library, the fire crackling companionably. You did good, kid, the old man said, settling into his chair with a sigh. Reminded me of Eliza. Standing tall, no apologies. Timothy perched on the ottoman, Jax waiting discreetly outside. About her. You. Why hide it so long? Harlan's gaze drifted to the photomantle. Fear mostly. Times were brutal McCarthy hunts, whispers in the club. But you've got the world cracking open. Use that estate to crack it wider. They embraced, Harlan's whisper fierce. The will stands. You're my heir, blood and bone. Word spread like wildfire through the clan. Texts pinging, calls from distant aunts. By evening, the estate thrummed with tentative reconciliation. Elena organizing a bonfire, cousins dragging out Harlan's old guitar for sing-alongs. Jax and Timothy stole moments. A dance in the gazebo to fireflies' glow. Hands linked, bodies swaying to an imagined slow jam. Under the stars, by the pond's edge, Jax drew Timothy close. This your happy ending? Timothy smiled, genuine, the weight lifting. Not ending. Beginning. Their kiss deepened, passionate yet tender. A vow etched in night air. Betrayal's scars lingered. Richard's wariness, Elena's amends. But forgiveness bloomed, human and hard-won. Months later, the reading confirmed it. Timothy inherited, steward of legacy and love. He poured the fortune into the center, expanding to retreats, scholarships, turning pain into purpose. Richard visited sporadically, thawing over shared coffees. Harlan watched from his armchair, content. In the end, coming out hadn't destroyed the family. It rebuilt it, brick by vulnerable brick. And as Timothy sketched by the window, Jax's head on his shoulder, he knew. The worst they'd feared was the lie they'd lived. The truth set them free.